VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. It is Monday. We are 5.5 weeks away from the draft, which is going to be one of the biggest climaxes in Vikings history. And if they don't disappoint, they will draft the quarterback somewhere in the top 11, probably in the top 5. And that's what the show is about. Everybody on this panel, the three of us, Janik, Eckardt, and Brevan, Bane, we agree that a second part to the trade that was conducted on Friday is going to fall at some point. I don't know if I say hopefully before the draft. I really don't care as long as it gets done. And then the Vikings can draft either Drake May or JJ McCarthy. It feels like a 2-horse race, at least for everybody's opinion, for the Vikings' next quarterback. But what this show is about today is chatting about what the price would be for the would-be second trade, because it's not going to be cheap. There's no other way around it. And on VikingsTerritory.com, I put together a list of prices and trade partners. So what I want to do is go around the horn, tell each individual here what that price is, who the team is, and they're going to tell me if it's absurd that the trade with that team would happen at all, and if the price is out of bounds. So Janik, how are you today, my man?
Doing good.
Not bad. All right, I'm going to start with you. So we're going to start at the least likely of the 4 scenarios for the Vikings' next trade to get their quarterback of the future. And per me, that would be a deal with the Chicago Bears. That would involve the first overall pick, and the target would presumably be Drake May. And I'll just come out and say it. I think because of the stupid or silly NFC North tax, I think that would cost 4 first-rounders. I have the 2 that they have right now. And then to even entice Chicago to the table at all, they'd have to give a 2025, a 2026. So I want you to tell me, is that trade price in the ballpark? And what is the realism of the Bears actually doing business with the Vikings?
So I don't see that trade happening at all. It's close to 0 because you don't give your division rival a borderline generational quarterback like Caleb Williams. Don't do it. And they traded away Justin Fields to complete their rebuild and draft that quarterback. They don't need more assets. They need a quarterback. So I don't see it at all. However, if the Vikings somehow want to pursue this, I think it would take these 4 first-round picks, and I think it would be even more. Maybe add a player like maybe even Justin Jefferson to even get them to talk to you. I think that's where we are at.
Yeah, I mean, God forbid, if that had to be the plan, I think you could I hope that you would subtract 1 or 2 first rounders if you had to give Jefferson. Normally we say, well, the Bears might need a tackle, so Darrisaw or O'Neal, but I haven't checked on their depth chart after free agency. I don't know if they're set now at tackle. I think the way they're building it, they either have one side done and they'll probably draft somebody at number 9. But yeah, they last year they proved that they want a player to go along with it, and DJ Moore, and they got it. So Brevan, same question to you: 4 first rounders, including the NFC North tax, and how realistic in general is a Bears and Vikings swap?
Yeah, I'm with Janik. I think it's a pretty low possibility, and to make it a possibility, I think you've got to add more, not just with the NFC North tax. You're convincing a team to come off that almost borderline generational quarterback, like Janik said. So NFC North tax considered, like I think 4 first rounders might be the start. I think you might have to throw in a player or 2. So to get them to come off it would be really cool to trade with Chicago and have them give you a generational quarterback. That would kind of rock. But yeah, I don't really see it happening, and that's fine. I think I'm on the record for saying there's not really a price too high to pay for one of these quarterbacks, but maybe I lied when I see 4 first rounders be the start.
Yeah, it's only that obscene because of the division rivalry and the stakes,
Yep.
that Bears would be handing this, allegedly generational dude, and they have to see him twice per year. While we're on the topic, since we motored through this one, probably because it's pretty unrealistic, Janik, how will Justin Fields do in Pittsburgh? Do you think he'll take over as QB1 and be the long-term guy there, or will we be talking about him next offseason and landing spots?
Oh, man. I think Russell Wilson will do much better in Pittsburgh than he did last year, but man, it's just a rough quarterback depth chart. both are just not good. So I think he's gonna get a new job next year again as a backup, and yeah, I think
Yes.
he needs to really develop in the next 12 months or let's say in the next 9 months to really get a shot.
Yeah, and to any fantasy managers that had him as your QB1 solution, this guy has one. But I also have Anthony Richardson, so I'm not hurting too much. Brevan, what about you? I was going to say, I have sympathy and RIP to that plan. Devin, Justin Fields as a QB1 in Pittsburgh, does it eventually click?
No.
No.
I think with Russell Wilson, and the Kenny Pickett thing was weird. Like, they never signed Russell Wilson to be in a competition. I'm somewhat of a Kenny Pickett apologist. Like, I know he sucks, but I just like Kenny Pickett. So, no, Wilson's the starter. Justin Fields being sent for a 6th round pick, and it can turn into a 4, but that's only going to happen if Russ Wilson gets injured in the first couple weeks of the season. So I could sit here all day on my soapbox and talk about how right I was and all those arguments with Bears fans like 9 months ago about how he's a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence and he's borderline top 10. I could sit here and do that all day. Shout out to them for the impressions and the engagement and the ad revenue. But no, him being traded for a 6th round pick is everything you need to know about what the NFL thinks about Justin Fields. He has all the talent in the world, but you got to be able to throw the football. And while his stats weren't like, they were a little bit better, I guess, last year passing wise than they had been in years past, which really I'm being nice saying that. I like he had, I know he was injured some of the season, but he didn't have a lot of passing touchdowns, and like 35 to 40% of his passing touchdowns came in one game. So 1 or 2 games. So it's like, it's just not there. I'd love to see it because I like Justin Fields coming out of the draft. I'd love to see him, especially now that he's not in Chicago, kind of blow up and take that step. But I just don't know if it's going to happen. And Pittsburgh, for what they've been offensively, I don't know. That's definitely not the team he's going to figure it out on. So.
Yeah, the two things about Justin Fields is he's fast, and that's always so alluring and enticing. And then every game he makes about 2 sweet throws. And this is what we used to do with Christian Ponder. We'd be, I see it, he did it. And then therefore we talk ourselves into thinking, all right, we know it's in there. If he can get consistent, he's going to be just fine. And so that's exactly what we see with him. And then it's so weird that it's like he starts slow, and then he finishes the last 8 games pretty good and gets them all excited that, he could be the guy. So yeah, we shall see how he does in Pittsburgh. I have a feeling he's kind of going to be like our Trey Lance, where we talk about him, for the next 2 off seasons. They're like, oh, he needs snaps. But
yeah, and I looked it up just to be sure. He had 8 passing touchdowns, and I think it was week 4 and 5, and the rest of the season he had 8 total. So he had half of his passing touchdown production in 2 games. It's not going to happen.
I will say this: after he was traded, I think I accidentally stumbled upon the Mel Kiper soundbite from January 8th, and I don't know why I'm giving in defense of Bears fans, but if Mel Kiper said, "Hey, this guy's probably going to go for the first overall pick to Atlanta," or not, the first round pick to Atlanta, the 8th. That gave that some credence. And so, although Bears fans ran with it and they may have had that theory on their own to begin with, Mel Kiper said it. And maybe he needs to stick to the draft itself and not trade package prices, because that one was outlandishly wrong. All right, so we are on to the next one, which is more likely than a Bears trade, but probably not likely on the whole. Maybe it depends on how right Vegas is in tabulating the odds for Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is the forgotten man in Vikings football in the last 4 days. As soon as that trade with the Texans was fired off, we all shifted, I think rightfully so, to Drake May and JJ McCarthy as the solution at QB1. Jaden Daniels, I'd say in January and February, was right there. If the Vikings were going to make a splash, hey, this is what they're going to take. But then sportsbooks decided, nah, he's going to Washington. So Janik, if the Vikings do business with the Commanders, let's say all of the smoke about Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury pairing because he likes off-script quarterbacks, if that's wrong, I think that one will cost the 2 firsts that the Vikings have, and then their first next year. Now, when I say this with trade capital, it could always be offset by, hey, they'll give you their 3rd rounder, we get their 4th or some shit like that. But Janik, is the price with the Commanders 3 first rounders correct? And what is the likelihood of the Vikings doing business with Washington, generally speaking?
So the trade price, I think you had to add another 3rd, 4th round pick, another mid-round pick to get it done. But I'm also convinced Washington will just pick Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
He's what Cliff Kingsbury wants. They signed Marcus Mariota, and you want your backup to be a light version of your starter, and Mariota is that. So I think they're just locked in and not really interested in a trade. So close to let's say a 3% chance.
Okay, so you have essentially written off a Vikings Commanders
Yeah.
trade, and I think a month ago, you and me both were like, yeah, well, they're going to have to trade up into the top 3, so it could be the Commanders and it could be the Patriots. I'm guessing that the Kingsbury connection is what convinced you that one won't go through, Vikings Commanders?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Brevan, same question to you. 3 first rounders, is that an accurate price? And do you have any more positive feeling that the Vikings Commanders deal could get done?
I think this one is considerably more likely than trading up to 1, but that's not saying much. I don't think it'll happen. I think the price is about right. I think like a 4th or 5th round pick on top of that this year, which your next pick after these first round picks this year is a 4th round pick. So I don't know how much they want to do that. But yeah, I think it'd take another mid to late rounder for that. And I like that you brought up Jaden Daniels, kind of forgotten about, because we're just looking at the ceiling of May, the floor of Daniels, or the floor of McCarthy, and then Daniels is kind of in limbo, I guess, because we just assume he's going to Washington. For good reason, we assume that. But no, I think it would just take another mid to late round pick. If Daniels is like, I would be more comfortable throwing more on this trade if May was your target at 2 than if Daniels was. But like if Daniels slid to 3, maybe I'd be a little bit more open to that. But no, it's about right. I think you just got to throw another mid to late rounder on it.
Janik, do you consider Jaden Daniels a boom or bust quarterback candidate? Josh Fry, who's our Wednesday guest, told me that off air. Do you have him in that?
So from a skill perspective, I think he's incredible. He's fast. His arm is really good. He's great. He's a great decision maker. Takes care of the football. The problem is he's a mobile quarterback, and they tend to get hurt. He's not a big guy, so I think he's going to be a great prospect if he's staying healthy. If he's getting hurt, that's a moot point, and he's Robert Griffin too in Washington.
So you're saying that injuries, based on your scouting of him, is the only thing that you think would derail him completely, or unless Washington's him?
Yeah, absolutely. He has all the skills you need.
Brevan, what say you? Is Josh Fry correct that Daniels is boom or bust, or are you kind of more in the middle, shall we say?
I guess more in the middle. He's completely justified in saying that. I think the beauty of this draft class is I think there's 3 quarterbacks, and that's the top 3 consensus in Williams, Daniels, and May, that any one of them could easily be the best quarterback of the draft. And Daniels, the things I like about him for the most part is something that his weaknesses, for lack of a better term, are something that you can kind of coach into him. I guess the biggest knock on him is he's only had like 1 full season of true production, and it was last season at LSU where he was phenomenal. But just his pocket presence is a little iffy, but he has like an excellent escapability to kind of offset that. And again, pocket presence, especially behind Christian Darrisaw on your blind side. That's something you can learn. He's got the fundamental throwing motion. He's got the follow through. He's an absolutely spectacular rushing threat. He's got the velocity to get it to all the levels of the field. So he's got all the tools you could want. You want him to put some weight on because he's pretty lanky. He's tall but kind of skinny. But no, I think if we were to trade up for Jaden Daniels, I think you'd have to be excited.
Yeah. Oh, we certainly would be. There's no other way around it.
Yeah.
All right, Janik, the next one is where the rubber hits the road. It is the Patriots at number 3. And the reason, all right, so there was a Bill Simmons tweet that said, was almost sarcastic, that said the Patriots have a not official general manager in the front office, a first-year head coach, and an 80-something-year-old Robert Kraft trying to figure out what a good trade price would be. I took that tweet to heart, probably because I wanted it to be that way. And I have 2 first-rounders plus one of the bonanza of third-rounders that the Vikings will have next year because of compensatory. So 2 firsts and a third to the Patriots, presumably for Drake May. Is that a good price? And what is the realism? Janik.
Price, I think it's either 3 first-round picks, so 2 this year and next year's, or this year's 2 first-rounders and 2 third-rounders in addition. Realistic, it all depends on New England, how they want to build their roster. Do they want to fill some holes and then add the quarterback, or do they want to add the quarterback first and then fill the holes? It all depends on that. If they think Drake May is the real deal, or whoever is available, they're not going to trade it trade the pick if they want to build get their quarterback first. But it's certainly much more likely than the previous 2 scenarios. I think it's almost a toss-up at this point. And it really depends on New England.
6 days ago or 5 days ago on the show, Thor Nystrom told Josh Fry and I that, for his pals or what he had heard, that the Patriots aren't necessarily in love with Drake May. And we trust Thor. And again, because I think we want it to be right, we're like, hell yeah, that's right. So I know it's no secret this show has endorsed Drake May as the Vikings' next quarterback, no matter what Sam Darnold does. So that's where we're at on the Patriots being realistic. Brevan, I have 2 firsts and a third. Is that too skimpy? And is this the front runner for you in terms of who the Vikings ultimately barter with, assuming they don't do some shit and just stay with their organic 2 picks now?
Yeah, I think this is the trade that we're kind of all expecting. You're definitely gonna have to have your 2 first-rounders this year. I like the third for next year. If you were to throw in your first-round pick next year to get to this pick, I'd understand, but I think you'd want to get like a mid-round, late-round pick swap with them going too. So no, I like this trade all around. Like 2 firsts and a third. Again, front-loading the compensation. I've said how much I love the trade with the Texans, so I'll try not to sound like a broken record. But I love the front-loadedness that they've put themselves in position for. So if you can pull off this trade and not eat into your first-round picks in the future, I'd be all for it. I'd make this trade 115 times out of 100. Especially for Drake May. So if you can make this trade for Drake May, that's a home run out of the park, slam dunk, whatever other scoring terms in sports you want to make.
The Patriots, after first wave of free agency, here's what I think happened. They won 6 Super Bowls with the way Belichick constructs rosters, plus Tom Brady, and now both men are gone. And I think they stare down at a roster that most coaches would be like, how did they do that? And so right now, I think they have 2 decent tackles, like Riley Reef types. I don't think he's still on that roster, but like guys who are like in the 60s of PFF. I don't know if they're foundational. They have Matthew Judon as their 1 edge rusher. So right away, they probably need at least 1 tackle, probably 2, an edge rusher. They'll tell you their wide receiver room is figured out, but as we all know, it's just a bunch of dudes plus KJ Osborne, and then a quarterback. They of course need that because right now it's just Jacoby Brissett after they sent Mac Jones to Jacksonville for backup duty. So when we optimistically say the Patriots have roster holes, it's not a bunch of fluff. They do have them. To Janik's point, it all comes down to whether or not they want to start at the top, take their lumps next year with Drake May, not in a good situation for him. It's Ramondre Stevenson, Kendrick Bourne, KJ Osborne,
and Jalen Reagor.
Yeah, Jalen Reagor. Yeah, they swear to God, they have like a Chiefs wide receiving core before Raji Rice broke out, where it's just dudes that are all the exact same guy. So yeah, that's why we say it makes sense for the Patriots to build out the roster first, and then get Shadur Sanders next year or something like that, or whoever free agent might be available.
Is this third round pick? Is this the Vikings third round pick, or is this the comp pick they got from New England signing KJ? And are they in cahoots behind the scenes?
So that conspiracy theory was lifted up, I think, on Twitter. It started, then Janik lassoed it and put it all on Vikings territory. I think the theory goes that the Patriots would want the Vikings' juicy third round pick because. Right. If they're starting a rookie quarterback, they're probably going to be 6-11 or something. And then the Vikings can hedge that thanks to the signing of KJ Osborne, who guarantees the Vikings a couple compensatories, which Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, that was actually a really insightful interview. I don't know if you guys listened to on K-Fan. He was somewhat forthcoming this morning. He acknowledged those compensatory picks on the way, 1/3 for sure. And it sounded like he was pretty optimistic about another one. So yes, I'm buying like that conspiracy theory. We can call it that. But it really does check a lot of boxes, and I think that's why Janik ran with it to write about it. Yeah. All right, we're on to the final. I mean, there certainly could be more trade packages, like getting to the Charger spot and hoping for the best. I think that would be a draft night deal once they figured out, hey, JJ McCarthy's going to fall to 5. But this one is a deal with the Cardinals to number 4. To guarantee the Vikings at the very bottom of the floor could get JJ McCarthy. And for this one, Janik, I had 2 first-rounders and a 5th just for deal sweetener because sliding back from 4 to 11 isn't all that egregious. And then I'm guessing if we don't have McCarthy dragged into the top 3, this would be McCarthy as a Viking. And the Vikings really wouldn't give up that much. Like the cool part about this deal, 2 firsts and a 5th or something, is that you're not even really hemorrhaging the future at all. So what's the realism on a Cardinals, or I guess you can throw in Chargers deal if you want to here, for 2 first-rounders and, pick the deal sweetener of your choice?
If the Patriots, if you can't get the Patriots pick, you're either going to get the Cardinals or Chargers pick and to get in front of the Giants and draft McCarthy. I think the price, maybe two firsts and yeah, maybe you're right, and that's just it, and you're totally fine with it. Even if the 5th rounder is a 3rd rounder next year, you can also live with that. So I guess that's kind of the consolation prize. Although I don't really see McCarthy as a consolation prize. He can play. He's much more than a game manager label he's talked about.
Yeah, and when for those that are set on Drake May, like myself, you have to remember that he has 2 more years of like human life than JJ McCarthy does right now, or a year and a half or so. So what you're seeing from Drake May at North Carolina, or what you're seeing now in the draft hype machine, if McCarthy stayed for a year and got even better and was allowed to throw down the field in a non-Harbaugh offense, we could be hyping up McCarthy like we're doing right now for Drake May. It's just he's so damn young, and he played in an offense that didn't need him to be a gunslinger. I think that is why for some McCarthy is kind of like I guess if we can't get Drake May, but I don't think that needs to be the case. All right, Brevan, the final part here is the Cardinals at 4 or Chargers at 5, whichever way you interpret it, for 2 first-rounders and a deal sweetener of your choice. Is this the second most realistic option?
The only reason I'd say it's like unrealistic whatsoever is not because I think the trade, like the compensation is pretty spot on. It's just the reports that I've seen at least show like I don't see any steam about Arizona even wanting to trade down. Maybe just wanting to stick and pick Marvin or like Neighbors or somebody. So that's the only reason I'd say it's like unrealistic, but it's not unrealistic at all. I think the trade compensation is spot on. And again, like I've said it a couple of times, I'm a McCarthy guy. Of course, that's because I didn't think May was attainable before this trade. So I wouldn't be mad at all with the trade up with McCarthy. And I've seen a lot of people. I get why it would be disappointing to end up with McCarthy after all this. But I guess if you didn't like McCarthy to begin with, you're safe from contradiction. But like, if you liked McCarthy and you don't want to do this trade, but you wanted to do a trade where you'd be sending your first rounder and your second rounder and something next year, it doesn't make any sense for you to not like this trade, because again, you're not eating into the future whatsoever. Your second first round pick with that hedge that you mentioned, with the comp picks and everything next year, this trade is like the same as the other trade, just it's all this year. Your second round pick is now your second first round pick with the hedge of the comp picks next year. So I'd be happy with McCarthy. Again, a little bit of a disappointment, I guess, if it wasn't Drake May. But the beautiful thing about McCarthy is, and you brought up a good point, that he could be every bit as good as where May is at now. May, I think, actually had a down year last season. But yeah, McCarthy gets a lot of slack for like being on Michigan. And yeah, I don't know. It's the same people that knock him for being on a good team, like he didn't beat Michael Penix, that they will support in the national championship. And Michael Penix had 4 top 90 draft prospects on his team, but that's my anti-Michael Penix slander for the day. I think you got the trade compensation spot on. I personally, since I'm a McCarthy guy, I wouldn't really be disappointed in it. I guess it'd be a little anticlimactic because we here at VikesNow like big climaxes. But no, I think you got spot on.
The coolest part, again, I'll reiterate, is if it turns out to be JJ McCarthy via trade with the Cardinals or via trade with the Chargers, and it's 2 first rounders and some mid or late rounder, I swear to God, it's going to feel like it's for free. Because we've had this long expectation for 2.5 months that, all right, we're going to have to trade 2 firsts and 2 seconds to get up and get our guy. But because of the brilliance of the trade from Friday, it'll feel like, holy shit, we still have our first rounder from next year too. Like we didn't have to mortgage the future at all. That's the upside of it, getting stuck with McCarthy instead of for the May truthers like myself. All right, last thing real quick. This is a curveball for you. Janik, there are 6 quarterbacks that are supposed to go off the board before round 2. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, and Bo Nix. We know from draft history that at least 3 of these guys, maybe 4, are going to either suck or not perform to expectations. So I want you to tell me the 3 guys before you even know which teams they're on, which 3 guys are going to be good.
So Caleb Williams is too talented to flame out. I think Drake May has everything. And I say Jaden Daniels is getting hurt, if I had to guess. And JJ McCarthy is going to be good. So Williams, May, McCarthy.
And Brevan, what say you? Same question.
I can only pick 3.
Yep. No. Yep.
Okay.
I'm not allowing it because
right.
At this time of year, it's too irresistible to think all of these guys minus Bo Nix are going to be good. So I need only 3 that are going to turn out to be starters for longer than 6-7 years.
That's tough. I guess I'll say Penix definitely isn't in there. And I think Bo Nix is going to be better than people think. That spot, Williams and May, of course, locked in, but between Daniels and McCarthy, I hate you for this. It's a toss-up. I think they're both going to be good, but if I had to choose one's going to be better, I'd say I'll stand on what I've said about McCarthy and go McCarthy. I think he just has more of the tools that a Kevin O'Connell can build a quarterback out of. Not to say that Daniels isn't, because I think he's going to be good too. But if I had to choose between both of them, that's not to say I would be pissed if we traded up to 2 for Washington and get Jaden Daniels. That would be electric. But I'll go McCarthy just to stand on everything I've said before.
It sounds like that you think 4 will be at least great or decent, correct?
Yeah. I think the top 4, and it probably won't shake out that way because the NFL draft sucks and we don't know. And Caleb Williams could suck, and Drake May could suck, and Michael Penix could be an NFL quarterback. I don't know. I don't know. I will say Bo Nix is getting a little overhated. I don't want Minnesota,
especially on this show.
Yeah. Bo Nix.
Every guest that comes in just says this guy sucks.
Exactly. Yeah. Nix can operate a good a well schemed offense in the NFL. I think he could be a high quality backup.
All right. Some housekeeping. Let's see. Wednesday, Josh Fry and I will talk to Stephanie Smalls. She's joining during the afternoon. Wednesday night, Janik and I will talk to Skol Doc from Vikings Twitter. Saturday evening, Brevan and I will talk to the great Thomas Sullivan, the late night episode. And then 2 weeks from Wednesday, we'll talk to Ryan Roberts from Rise and Draft. I got him locked down and working on more guests in general. All right, gentlemen, you have a wonderful afternoon. Janik, you're across the pond, a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you guys soon, all right?
Later.
All right, later.